And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another exciting installment from very high above all the impetuous, bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind yet another Silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. As you can see, we're back in the original home studio. That's all right, though. I think it's just for today and maybe the rest of the week. I don't know. I mean, who knows what Agent 29 is doing, but tomorrow we will be in the new studio. And, you know, this time of year, it's pretty difficult for Agent 29. He's got a lot of committee meetings. And I have to tell you, tomorrow, we are super excited about the show tomorrow. We have dug up some incredible pieces of video that expose how big of liars the left. The left is just lies about everything anyway. We're going to talk about that later on in the show. But even the left in Wyoming. And here's the reason why they have to lie. Because the ideas of the left don't work in the real world. The only place that they actually do work is in university buildings when you're surrounded by your egg-headed professors. That's the only way that these theoretical ideas work. That's why every time socialism and communism has been tried, it has failed. Well, it's intended to fail. But those ideas, they won't fly with the average everyday American because most of us possess common sense. We like having freedom. We like having, your financial freedom. I mean, it was just intrinsically tied to your personal liberty. But we like those things. We don't like being lied to. We like to make money. We like to live comfortably, and we want to live an existence that is free from undue encumbrances of government. Well, the ideas of socialism and the left are diametrically opposed to those, and so they have to lie, and they do it with reckless abandon. And, I did an episode, it was on the live program, I think it was last week, and I entitled it, Do They Know They're Lying? And Agent 29, to his credit, tried to play devil's advocate and said, well, when you're convinced of these things, you surround yourself with people that agree with you. And obviously they tell you all the time that, well, you're right. Yeah. And throw this little bit into your spiel. Well, I don't agree with that. I think that the left absolutely knows that they are full of crap. And they know that unless they lie, unless they don't tell you the truth, unless they don't manipulate the truth, then you aren't going to go along with it, which is their plan all along, by the way. So on tomorrow's show, we've got a couple of several sound bites that absolutely prove to you that the folks that are in power on a couple of the most important committees in our legislature are just flat full of crap. And there's a whole bunch of people in the Wyoming media that they just go along with it. And so on tomorrow's show, we're going to show those to you. And I know I'm excited. I know Agent 29 is pretty pumped about it. because they directly relate to some of the work that he's doing in the Wyoming legislature. So tomorrow is going to be a heck of a lot of fun. Also, later on in the week, on Thursday, I believe, I'm interviewing. We're going to have our pal Rod Miller back on the phone and or back on the program. And from what I've been told, what I've been able to glean from our interactions on social media, we're going to be debating a little bit of socialism. You see, Rod thinks that we ought to have government subsidies and that the government ought to be involved in the economy. I don't. And this is just what I'm taking from the limited conversation that we had on social media. You see, I think that the government ought to stay the heck out of private business. That business functions best when there is the least amount of taxes and regulations and government influence upon it. That you just let the free hand of the market operate as much as you can. Here's what I mean by that. We have to have some environmental regulations on, oil drilling. Okay. But the truth is, most companies operate ethically. Most companies do the job the correct way because it costs a heck of a lot more money to go back and fix the things that you screwed up in the very beginning. Now, our pal Rod, he's under the impression that we should be involved in all of these things. And so we're going to debate that Thursday, and then I'll probably publish the entire interview on Saturday's edition of the podcast. And then on Friday, I hope to have at least some sound bites of our interaction. It's going to be a phone interview because, it's hard for Rod to hook up a video camera when he's out by the campfire. There's connections to the internet and all that. But anyway, so we're going to do the interview on the phone. And so I'll bring that to you Friday. Probably just some sound bites from it, and then the full interview on Saturday. On today's program, as you can tell from my chalkboard, I have an interview with Bob Ferguson. Bob Ferguson is the vice chairman of the Wyoming GOP. And, my friends, it's not that often that I get to talk to you about things that are good. A lot of times on this program, I feel like I'm the little black rain cloud that, I'm always bringing you the bad stuff. Hey, look at what the socialists are doing now. This is how they're trying to take your freedom. I do that a lot on this program. But in today's episode or today's interview with Bob, it's something that's really good. He has set up a scholarship fund, or he's working on setting up a scholarship fund that I think is going to be tremendous. And so I had him on the program to talk about it. We'll probably do that. I don't know. I've got some stories I want to go through. And so my thinking is we'll probably run the interview. We'll just do it at 9:00 at the top of the second hour. So anyway, lots going on this week on the program. I've got a lot of stuff planned for the show. And don't forget, and I know I've been teasing this for a while and I've had to put it off for a little bit, but I'm anticipating the release of the open range record here pretty fast. I think that we're going to be able to do that. I'm thinking the second week of November. So my new release date is going to be November 15th. It's tremendous. It's a mobile app that's just going to bring you the news, just like it's supposed to be. News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page, verified sources, and which is very different than what you get from the Wyoming media. A lot of the stories that they print, they just throw them up on the front page and they leave it to you, which I guess, there's something to be said for this. But you have to sit there and glean through, okay, what is opinion? What is fact? Did this really happen? What is this person said this? So what does that mean? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to have news stories that are just the facts, and then we'll have an opinion section, and we're going to do our best to just bring you some news. And it's going to work out awesome for the legislative session, because I've already got people signed up to do writing for us, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. Also, I guess I can kind of release this one. During the legislative session, Cowboy State Politics is going to expand our offerings. We're going to have a nightly news show to tell you what happened during the day. We're going to have guests on, and my business partner in this whole thing. We're gonna have a great time doing it. So there's lots coming on the program, and I'm excited to tell you about it. But first, let's do some news. there's a great piece out from Jonathan Turley. And Jonathan Turley is not a conservative. In fact, I think that he may still be a Democrat, but he's been a Democrat for a long time. But he's a fair one. I mean, in many ways, he is the classic liberal. And by that, I mean, not crazy, just happens to think that maybe we ought to spend more money on social programs and those sorts of things. But he's fair. And he is one of the foremost attorneys in the United States. Now, his new piece is entitled, "We May Be Nearing When the Resistance Looks Completely Different. Democrat Leaders Ramp Up Their Resistance Rhetoric." Now, as conservatives, we think that when something happens, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, for example, we all engage in a little bit of self-introspection. I say, okay, so what have I contributed to any of this? And the most recent example of this conversation happened during the interview with Mike Yen and Carly Provenza. And if you haven't watched that interview, you should go back and look at it. It's available on YouTube and Rumble, and I published it on the podcast. But right at the end, I say, all right, let's hit the nail on the head. How can we turn the volume knob down? And I actually said, okay, so I'll take responsibility for whatever my part in this whole thing is, though I don't think that I have never called for any of this crazy violence or anything like that. But, I call a spade, and, maybe some people disagree with that. But anyway, their response was very telling. Basically, they said, we just need to remember that we're all neighbors. Yeah, okay, whatever. But here's what Jonathan Turley says, quote, "Despite calls from many Democratic politicians and pundits to temper their inflammatory rhetoric, this week has proven a further escalation in this dangerous form of rage rhetoric. DNC Chair Ken Martin told PMS NBC's The Beat that, quote, we may be nearing the moment when elections don't matter, and then the resistance looks completely different. Senate Minority Leader Chuck U. Schumer called on people to forcefully rise up." That's a quotation. With political violence on the rise, these leaders are clearly fueling the mob in hopes that they and their party can ride the wave of rage back into power. History suggests that this is a bit foolish. It's a delusion. And today's revolutionaries quickly became tomorrow's reactionaries. In the past, anytime you have let me let the studio dog out. Oh, by the way, remind me in just a little bit. I've got a great picture of the studio dog that I took this morning that I want to show you. Anyway, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who pictures himself brandishing a baseball bat, has previously called upon people to, quote, fight in the streets. Governor Gavin Newsom previously declared, quote, "I'm going to punch these sons of bees in the mouth." Virginia Democrat gubernatorial nominee Abigail Spanberger. I can't stand to watch that woman on TV. She just, one look at her and I've had enough. I just can't take it anymore. Let's see here. She called upon her supporters to, quote, "let your rage fuel you." She then refused to withdraw her support for the Democratic candidate for Attorney General Jay Jones. He's the guy that suggested his desire to kill his political opponents and their children. That they deserve 2 bullets in the head, I believe was the quotation. In his podcast with co-host Al Hunt, James Carville once again was spewing his unhinged rage. He returned for treating Trump and others as Nazis and their supporters as collaborators. Carville, I actually, you know what? I've got that video. Let me just let's see here. Let me just find it real quick for you. It's pretty disturbing. And again, you would think that like any normal person would look at a lot of this stuff and say, how can we tone down the rhetoric? How can we get back to just debating policy? Well, that's impossible with the left because they're not really interested in debating policy because they know they'll lose. History shows that the Democrat Party and the left are incapable of making their plans work because, frankly, we're never going to work. All right, so here's James Carville saying that collaborators need to be dressed in orange and paraded around so the public can spit on them. Listen to this.
You know what we do with collaborators,
right?
And I think as corporations, my fantasy dream is that this nightmare ends in 2029. And I think we ought to have radical thing. I think they all ought to have their heads shaven. They should be put in orange pajamas. And they should be marched down Pennsylvania Avenue. Wow. And the public should be invited to spit on them. the universities, the corporations, the law firms, all of these collaborators should be shaved, pajamaed, and spit on.
Disney and Paramount. I don't disagree.
Okay, so did you hear what he said? I don't disagree. I mean, so you got two of them that are saying, yeah, let's shave their heads, put them in shackles, dress them in orange, and we'll march them down Pennsylvania Avenue. Oh my God, my friends. And they wonder why we can't have a reasoned, calm political discussion with them. They're these people that say, well, we have to have unity. We have to have unity. Well, it's pretty hard to come together with folks that say that they absolutely want to shave your head, dress you in orange, and have the public spit on you. And here's here's what the left does. They have this whole bag of tricks, and it's their playbook. And the first page is call for unity. And what they mean by unity is we're supposed to come to their side. We're supposed to capitulate to their demands, which is what Republicans have always done. And to tell you the truth, there are very, 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 very few Republicans in Congress that still have their principles. In fact, and it's not just Congress, it's the state legislature too. I can count on one hand the people that haven't changed from the moment that they got elected until they're, some of them are still in office now, but until they left office, that they're the same person, that they haven't changed their beliefs, that they haven't changed their convictions. And I know a lot of them. And so a lot of people, they get into power and and I asked Harriet this once. All right, so what happens to people? We elect these conservatives, or the people who we think are conservatives, and we send them off to Congress, and then they turn out to be a redcoat. What happens? And her response, and interestingly enough, it kind of echoed what Rush Limbaugh said in his book, that it takes no courage to say yes. And when you get to Congress, there's all these fancy parties and fancy restaurants, and you want to be included in all that. And if you're a conservative, you're not. And so the only way, and what will happen, according to Harriet, is you get invited to one of these parties. And, everything's great and you're having a good time. And then they pull you off to the side and say, you need to vote this way on this bill. Just this one time. And after a while, you get tired of being pounded on by your colleagues and you finally say, okay, fine, I'll give in one time. Yes. And then the next time becomes easier, and then the next time becomes easier. And then you just start enjoying all of the everything that goes along with capitulating to the left, and you find out that you're pretty much a redcoat, which kind of means that you were never a conservative to begin with. But anyway, that's how it happens. Well, the next page in the Democrat playbook is when their calls for unity don't work. Then they call their acolytes out into the streets. Get out in the streets and protest. You're Chuck U. Schumer, and you stand on the steps of the Supreme Court and tell the Supreme Court justice that he's going to reap the whirlwind. Or you're Hakeem Jeffries, or you're Nancy Pelosi, or God help you if you're Maxine Waters, and you tell your supporters to find them in the restaurants and get in their face and make sure they know that they're unwelcome. That's almost a direct quote. But that's the next page in their playbook. And it happens every single time. Now, I showed you, and I'm going to have to, let's see here. You know what? All right. We're going to take a break here in just a couple of minutes, and I'm going to find a couple of pictures for you from the No Kings protests, a couple of the protests in Sheridan. And you tell me if I'm not wrong. Some of these folks really do want to hurt conservatives. Back to the Jonathan Turley piece. Doubling down, Carville declared, and this is the one I was going to play the rest of it for you. Here you go. It gets even worse. So where we left off is his co-host is saying, yeah, I totally agree. Shave their heads, put them in shackles, dress them in orange, and let people spit on them. Here's how it ended up.
Some people have contracts. I mean, I don't know about Lockheed or something like that. Okay, a little bit, but the people that unnecessarily bent a knee to this guy, no way. No way. And the idea is you have to pay more because you did this, because it is the only way that you're going to discourage future collaborators in the United States.
Yeah, because, James, as we know, one thing we know about a bully if you give in to a bully, that's not it. That's not the end of it. The bully doesn't say, okay, fine, it's all. Bully comes back for more. And he will always come back for more. And those law firms,
So this is two old guys that are past their political prime that really don't have anything to lose. They don't have to play by the Democrat Party playbook anymore. They've thrown that book away. James Carville also, I mean, when his show fails, maybe he can take up another gig as the Crypt Keeper in Tales from the Crypt. God knows he already looks like it. But to be sure, Carville's menacing words were not lost. He then added the universities, the corporations, the law firms, all of these collaborators should be shaved, pajamaed, and spit on. And there was no later pushback from his co-host, Hunt, or anyone else associated with the podcast. They just continued on. Like, this is normal operating procedure for the American left. And make no mistake, my friends, it is. And we are past the time where we can say, well, I mean, they really didn't mean that. It was just hyped up rhetoric. But I think that we should absolutely take these people at their word. When are we going to learn? I mean, they're marching down Main Street in Sheridan, Wyoming, and every other town in America, or town that they set up a protest. By the way, I still haven't shown you that video of the No Kings protest in Cheyenne. It was fascinating. There were people dressed up as dinosaurs, and one person dressed up as a cow. I don't know what that signifies, but that's what that was happening in downtown Cheyenne on the steps of the Capitol building. And so to think that all of this hyped up hyperbolic rhetoric is just that. I mean, I think that's being pretty disingenuous to yourself, that we absolutely should take these people at their word. Turley continues, even with the assassination of Charlie Kirk and his attempts on Trump and Justice Brett Kavanaugh, these politicians and pundits are still fueling the madness. Even with the sniper attack on ICE officers, they're still calling for the law enforcement officers Gestapo and Nazis. In my book, in Turley's book, The Indispensable Right, Free Speech in the Age of Rage, he writes about the uncomfortable truth for many engaging with rage rhetoric. Quote, here's what Turley says in his book. What few today want to admit is that they like it. They like the freedom that it affords, the ability to hate and harass without a sense of responsibility. It is evident all around us as people engage in language and conduct that they repudiate in others. We have become a nation of rage addicts, flailing against anyone or anything that stands in opposition to our own truths. Like all addictions, there is only a dependency on rage, but an intolerance for opposing views. Indeed, to voice free speech principles in a time of rage is to invite the rage of the mob. Now, let me give you an example. And I actually, I've had conversations with this guy. I actually like him. But on one of my posts, and this is the one where Rod and I got into it about socialism and subsidies, there was a commenter that started calling Rod Miller a Nazi. Rod is not a Nazi. Called him unintelligent. Rod's actually pretty intelligent. I think that he's misguided on a lot of other things. And so my response to it, and this is what conservatives need to do, I think. My response to it was tone it down. He is neither of those things. And that was enough. I mean, the comments stopped after, I don't know what he sent to Rod on social media, on private message or whatever. But that's what it takes, my friends. And the folks on the other side, well, they're the ones that fuel all of this rage rhetoric. And, it ends up in a very, very dark place. History, the reason why we study history, my friends, is so that we understand what happened, we understand the cause and effect, and hopefully we figure out how not to do that again. That didn't work. In fact, it turned out really, really bad. So let's not do that again. One of those is the French Revolution, which I'm going to get to in just a second. In the French Revolution, and this is Turley writing here, the irony is that those who turned the guillotine into the symbol of the revolution were themselves beheaded on the same platforms. Robespierre and others would ultimately be dispatched in the same atmosphere of rage and revelry. The revolution, however it manifests itself, always consumes itself. Always. And what happens is you have the radical left that gets out in the streets, and pretty soon the radical left becomes so far, they go all the way that way. This is my left, by the way. They go all the way that way, and they become far more radical and far more willing to act on their radicalism than even the politicians wanted them to. And pretty soon, the politicians, the leftist people that started this whole thing, are not radical enough. A really, really good example of this is Chuck U. Schumer. Now, there have been lots of news reports lately where old Chucky Boy has been, and the government shutdown is a really good example of this. He said, we're going to shut down the government because we got to have these subsidies. And it really backfired on him. And then any politician, even on the left, that's got half a brain would say, okay, that plan didn't work. We're really hurting people. And they happen to be our voters. It was just yesterday I saw a piece on Fox News that said that the Public Employees Union has turned against the Democrats for the government shutdown. Well, of course they are. Of course they have. Because we're like 30-some days into this thing. And I don't even know if it's that much, but it's a lot. And there's a lot of public employees that haven't had a paycheck in a while. Well, if people are hungry and they're poor, they'll do a heck of a lot of things that they wouldn't normally do, and that's what's happened. Well, the reason why Chucky Boy hasn't relented is because of the radical left. The AOCs and the Zoran Mamdanis and the Kathy Hochul's and everybody, Hakeem Jeffries, all these people that are endorsing the communist in New York, because he knows that AOC is probably going to run for his Senate seat. There was another piece this morning, I didn't print it off, but it said that Chucky Boy's fundraising has dried up. And where is it going? AOC. Now, he's very worried that AOC is going to take his Senate. Not that she's smart enough to be in the Senate, but she has the base, which is pretty shocking. I mean, that New York would elect Zoran Mamdani is a commentary on the future of the American left. It absolutely is. You have somebody who's not qualified to be in that office, who is a radical communist, and she's going to take the U.S. Senate seat from Chucky Boy. Now, it's not that I like Chuck U. Schumer, but he's not the crazy radical that AOC is. Far-left Democrat, to be sure, but not the radical that would go out into the streets like AOC. Now, some have noticed this. Protesters are burning cars, dealerships, and even lawyers and reporters are on the left are throwing Molotov cocktails at police. In the end, today's pseudo-revolutionaries are likely to find themselves tomorrow's reactionaries. Leading mobs is rarely a safe place to be as more radical elements take hold of the movement. The result is an inexorable pattern that runs throughout history as revolution devours its own. And that is exactly what happens every single time. Now, one of the reasons that the American Revolution didn't turn out that way is because it was very different. It wasn't free stuff. It wasn't built on power. It was built on freedom. And that's the very reason why George Washington insisted that we not get involved in the French Revolution in 1789. People like Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson tried to convince Washington. They said, hey, George, look what's going on over here. This is the same thing. We can free France. And George Washington said, no. That is not the same thing. It is very, very different. And Paine and Jefferson realized it later. Thomas Paine spent time in the Bastille, in the prison. So the revolutions always devour their own. It always ends in bloodshed. And what you are seeing right now, I think we're not pre-bloodshed anymore. The revolution will devour its own, and the leftist politicians are going to find that out. And, I've got some friends that live in New York, but I got to tell you guys, the vast majority of voters in New York are going to get exactly what they deserve. I've always said that there's never, with the exception of the 2020 election, I've always said that there's never been an election in America that has been wrong. That voters get what they deserve. They always get what they deserve. And in the case of Zoran Mamdani, and I've got a soundbite I'm going to play for you a little bit later that is that shows you exactly what I led the program with, that Democrats and radicals have to lie. And it's absolutely the truth, my friends. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue with the program. Coming up at the top of the hour, Vice Chairman of the Wyoming GOP, Bob Ferguson. We'll do that in just a second. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday, having more fun than, frankly, anybody should ever be allowed to have. But hey, it's my show. I can do what I want. And the reason you're here is to listen to me and hear what I have to say about the day's event. So I told you before the break that I took a great picture this morning. And let's see here. Yeah, I can do that. And, you know, one of the things I really like about broadcasting from this studio is the studio dogs. And I just took this picture this morning. I think it's great. Here, check this out. Here you go. That is the studio dog here in the Cowboy State Politics studio. Checking out the microphone. She wanted to be on the show, but something about not being able to understand English, I don't know. So anyway, that's the studio dog. Now, before the break, we were talking about what happens in a revolution. The French Revolution in 1789 is probably, well, I don't know, though. I mean, I was going to say that it's probably the best example of a revolution eating its own, but it may not be. The 1917 Bolshevik Revolution in the Soviet Union turned out very, very much the same way. We don't have... And frankly, we don't have numbers of how many people were killed during the French Revolution, and we probably don't know how many died during the Bolshevik Revolution either. But here's what happened in that one: the Soviets, which were there, they were kind of like the upper crust, right? Lenin and his pals. Now the Bolsheviks, they were the working class, and so what happened is Lenin got together with the Bolsheviks and said, "Hey, we got to start a revolution," and they did all the heavy lifting. And when the coup happened, when the Tsar was overthrown, the Soviets took power. And guess what they did to the Bolsheviks? Got rid of them. Because, of course, when they realized that Lenin had been lying to them and that he was going to seize power, and that the revolution was not going to turn out the way that they were told, well, of course, they would rise up again. So Lenin had to get rid of them. And that is pretty much what happens with every revolution, though we look at the French Revolution as the example. Now, Miranda Devine has kind of a similar piece. This one, and this is about the ridiculous rhetoric coming out of the Democrat Party. We've got a so-called government shutdown going on. Our troops aren't getting paid, though. I've got a couple of pieces here in, it's in the stack of stuff somewhere, but Timothy Mellon, who lives in Wyoming, donated $130 million so that our troops could get paid. But for up until now, our troops haven't been paid. Public employees haven't been paid. Now, of course, when the government shutdown finishes, yeah, they'll get back pay and all of that. But a lot of people are hurting right now. I was talking with my mom the other weekend, and she was telling me the story of kids that were on the free school lunch program. Now, of course, a school is not going to deprive a kid of having lunch. They're just going to add it to the bill. But here's what happens when the shutdown continues longer than it just continues on. That bill keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And even when those benefits those checks are written and those families do get them, well, then they got this big giant bill that they have to pay to the school. And it's going to be another month before they're able to get caught up if they can. When you get into debt, it is very hard to get out of it. And that's what's happening. And it's not just school lunch. Just think about power bills or, the electric bill, the water bill, all of those things. I mean, if you are a public employee and your family relies on that paycheck, well, then when you're not getting it, you just have to rack up debt. And then it gets far worse when the shutdown actually ends and you start getting paid again. You're in debt and it's pretty hard to get out of it. Well, that's a pretty terrible situation. And any politician worth their salt would try everything they could. Well, any rational politician would try everything they could to get out of it, thinking that they know what's going to happen on the other end. Voters are going to hold them responsible for the government shutdown. But that's not what the Democrats are doing. They're doubling down. And they've decided that the destruction of the East Wing and the building of the most fantastic ballroom, it's going to be amazing. Everybody says so. The big, beautiful ballroom is what they're going after. From Miranda Devine, Trump derangement syndrome has morphed into something far more lethal, Trump projection disorder. And I quote, this time last year, the conversation was about what is an acceptable number of apartment complexes in Colorado that we can tolerate being taken over by Venezuelan gangs and illegal immigrants. Now, the big issue is the president's big, beautiful ballroom. The No Kings folks are melting down. In just 2 days last week, there were 10,000 comments on the Washington Post website railing against the ballroom, which is being built at no cost to taxpayers. So $0 that you have to pay for. It's all being built with private funds. Quote, I can't wait for the day that they hold Trump's funeral in that gaudy ballroom was a typical recommended comment from someone calling herself Cindy in the suburbs. Trump is living inside their heads, my friends. If you thought that Trump derangement syndrome was bad in the president's first term, you ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, this is like BTO on steroids. That's the band that wrote the song, You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. This time around, it's morphed into something far more lethal. Like a wounded animal that's been cornered, electorally challenged Democrats are desperate and dangerous. They make Trump derangement syndrome look like a quaint affectation. In the spirit of, if you can't beat them, join them, they're trying to imitate Trump, but they're imitating a foul-mouthed cartoon villain version of a Hitlerian dictator that they have convinced themselves that he is. TDS Redux has become Trump projection disorder. It's hard to keep up with all of these different disorders on the left. Everything they've accused him of being, they've now become. Nazi tattoos and all. That Graham Plattner up in Maine with his, and actually I think I can show you let me just look at it real quick. Yeah, here he is. Okay, just a second, and I will show you the Graham Plattner tattoo. Let's see here, screen share. There it is. And it's much easier when I have a producer to do this. All right, so here we go. Here is the Graham Plattner tattoo, and let me just make this a little bit bigger for you. So here he is, and you can see the Nazi tattoo on his chest, and it's kind of blurred. It's an old tattoo, but anyway, and he claims that he got it during the military when he's in the military. Sure, he did, but it's been revealed that he has another tattoo on his arm that has some Nazi, semblance or something to it. But anyway, that is now acceptable. Bernie Sanders has come out and said, well, it got a long time ago. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. And now Plattner has had the tattoo on his chest covered up as if that solves the problem. That you have a guy that's lived almost much of his entire adult life with the Nazi tattoo on his chest. And even his former campaign manager has said that he bragged about it. His Totenkampf tattoo, or it's a skull and crossbones that the Nazi SS adopted. So anyway, that's where the Democrats are at, excusing things that they accuse everybody else of being. And it's truly amazing. Sure enough, Plattner remains the front runner in the Democrat primary. The latest polls have him 34 points ahead of the Maine governor, Janet Mills. In Virginia, Democrats are running a candidate as the state's attorney general who said he wanted to murder a Republican lawmaker and his small children. The GOP is no longer in politics. But Jay Jones is still on the Democratic ticket to be Virginia's top cop alongside gubernatorial aspirant Abigail Spanberger, who won't say a bad word about him, let alone disavow his candidacy. The ex-CIA operative is running against the black Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. The NAACP is backing the white woman. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up, my friends. The left is so far over with their radical pals that I doubt that in the near future we will see them come back to the middle. Now, Zohran Mamdani described Siraj Wahhaj, who was a unindicted co-conspirator during September 11th, as a, quote, pillar of the community in his social media post. But the Uganda-born Democratic Socialist has been shedding crocodile tears all week because he caught a little blowback for his embrace of the terror apologist just 24 years after September 11th traumatized the city that he aims to lead. Quote, Islamophobia is something that is endemic in politics around this country, Mamdani complained to PMS NBC over the weekend. In fact, he went so far as to try to bring in his aunt into this. And, he said that, after September 11th, his poor auntie, couldn't wear her hijab in public anymore. Here he is doing it.
I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of New York City. I want to speak to the memory of my aunt. Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
So that's what he takes away from September 11th, because his auntie couldn't wear her hijab. The only problem is his aunt didn't live in New York. It was actually his dad's cousin that he was talking about. Now, maybe I've got relatives that I called grandpa and grandma who weren't technically my grandpa and grandma, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not running for the mayor of New York. I'm not the guy that everybody is going to fact check. But see, this goes back to my original point and when I started today's show, that Democrats have to lie. And they do so often that they don't know the difference between what is true and what is not true. But in the case of Zohran Mamdani, he absolutely knows that he doesn't have an aunt, that she didn't live in New York City. Well, he does have an aunt, but she never lived in New York City. And the person he's talking about was actually his dad's cousin. So, the Democrats have to lie, my friends, and you shouldn't believe anything that comes out of their mouth. All right, moving on. I've got more sound bites later of crappy Democrat politicians, but this one is entitled, and I believe this is from the New York Post, The FBI's Big Sweep, 5 days, numerous cities, and one big, huge bite out of crime. And I quote, Director Kash Patel's FBI has been building fresh alliances with local police for months, and that effort is now paying big dividends as a sweeping crime crackdown disabled illegal enterprises in cities nationwide that hit everything from the mafia to drug cartels. Over the weekend, maybe it was on Friday, the news came out that a sports betting scheme, including all 5 families and NBA players, was busted. I can't for the life of me figure out, if you're being paid $20 million a year, why you need to engage in an illegal betting scheme, but apparently they do. Officials said raids around Milwaukee were the product of a years-long investigation that tied the gangs of Milwaukee to global trafficking cartels. Operation Chalkline was a long-term, multi-year criminal enterprise investigation that targeted a violent street gang operating in Milwaukee and Racine with direct connections to a major international cartel. It netted 22 arrests, plus the confiscation of many weapons and drugs. Bongino said that the recent successes in Milwaukee, New York, Philadelphia, and San Antonio were an outgrowth of enhanced partnerships with local police departments through Homeland Security. Now, here's just a question. We have J.B. Pritzker saying that the murder rate in his city went down. It's gone down by half, and it goes down by half every single year. Well, why is it that we see videos? And I mean, it's every single weekend where double-digit numbers of people are killed in the city of Chicago. Now, again, this is just another example of Democrats lying. But the point I'm making is that they could have handled crime a lot sooner. I don't know. They've had like 5 years to do it, and they know that there's a problem in their city. But it's all politics. You see, Joe Biden was the president, and all the Democrats were in power, including J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. But listen, here he is on Brett Baer's show, just absolutely denying the facts. Check this out.
Why does Chicago have the highest murder rate of all the big cities?
Well, we are not in the top 30 in terms of our murder rate. Indeed,
Well, the murder
our murder rate it has been cut in half over the last 4 years, and every year it's gone down by double digits. And if you look at all of the violent crime over the last 4 years,
here's a map.
They've all gone down.
U.S. cities, 17.47 per 100,000 population. Chicago is number one over Philadelphia, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Phoenix, Los Angeles, New York, and San Diego.
What I'm explaining to you
Now,
is
you're
when
talking
you want to
about
fight
violent
crime. Look, you can pull statistics up.
No,
I can
these are
too.
murders.
I'm explaining to you that our murder rate has been cut in half. And very importantly, Brett, and you got to hear this. Very importantly, we've been doing the things that are necessary to bring crime down, right?
Obviously, he doesn't, he knows that what he's saying is not true. But it's all politics with him. He has to lie because he's being confronted with the facts that, hey, you have the highest murder rate in the entire country. And he accuses, and this is amazing too. This is the projection that Miranda Devine was talking about, that whatever they're doing, they accuse the other side of. And if you want to know what the Democrats have planned, just listen to what the left says, and they'll tell you, no, the murder rate has gone down. You know, we're absolutely taking care of crime. Well, there's another example. Let me just give you this one. Okay, so here is the mayor of Chicago, and he freaks out when a reporter asks him a question about illegal immigration, because they also have that problem too. And Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, he has been one of the most vocal critics of the Trump administration's crackdown on illegal immigration. Listen to what he says. This is fascinating. We'll listen to it, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
So it's come to our attention through our cultural sources, Mr. Mayor, that you're supposed to have filed a report on spending on illegal aliens in Chicago with the White House by now. What's happening with that, or what has happened with that?
We don't have illegal aliens. I don't know if that's from some sort of sci-fi message that you would have had. Well, listen, the legal term for my people were slaves. You want me to use that term too? So look, let's just get the language right. We're talking about undocumented individuals that are human beings. Yeah. The last thing that I'm going to do is accept the type of racist, nasty language to describe human beings. And so as far as our spending on Chicagoans, I've put forth a $16.7 billion balanced budget.
Hold on. All right. Okay. So what he's doing there is deflecting. Okay, I can't answer the charge that we've got illegal aliens, and I realize what I just said is a load of crap, and nobody is going to believe me. So he has to pivot. So avoid the question and say, "Well, no, I've passed a balanced budget," which I would absolutely love to see the so-called balanced budget for the city of Chicago. I guarantee that it's not balanced, and that's another term that politicians throw around all the time. Oh, we balance the budget. In Wyoming, the way that you hear that is they say, well, the constitutionally mandated balanced budget. There is no provision in the Wyoming Constitution for a balanced budget. It does not exist at all. There's no constitutional provision, and they don't really have a balanced budget anyway, because if you are borrowing from reserve funds to pay for what it is that you want to do, that budget is not balanced. By balanced, it means your spending does not eclipse your income. That's what balance means. And so what Brandon Johnson is doing is just deflecting. But listen to what he says in his deflection. This is amazing. Listen to this.
Ensures that we're investing in education, transportation, housing, youth employment, environmental justice, as well as ensuring that we have safe communities. And we are going to challenge the ultra wealthy to pay their fair share.
Okay, so he goes all the way back to all of the Democrat talking points, and he, like the governor Pritzker, is saying, "Oh no, we've invested in safer communities. You have the highest murder rate in the country. There's no place in Chicago that you can claim that you have a safe community, nor can you claim that you have safer communities, because that means that you're making progress in it, and you're not." So I don't know. It's absolutely amazing, my friends. The Democrats, they can't do anything but lie to you. And most of them know what the truth is. J.B. Pritzker, Brandon Johnson. Now, Brandon Johnson seems to be like your consummate radical. But the truth is, they can't tell you the truth. Because if they do, it means everything that they've told you in the past is not going to work. And the reality being, as if politicians said, hey, here's the truth. Here's what's happening. I want to fix it. Here's my plan to fix it. They'd probably get more votes. But because they're radical Democrats, they can't. I mean, I just think that they're biologically incapable of doing that. From the New York Post, Democrats' Obamacare lies reveal how flimsy their government shutdown excuses actually are. I talked about this a little bit ago with the big, beautiful ballroom. It's going to be fantastic. Everybody says so. It's going to be the biggest, beautifulest ballroom ever in the history of the world. From the New York Post. Strip away the lies about Obamacare subsidies set to expire this year, and Democrats' main excuse for shutting the government down goes up in smoke. Above all else, Democrats claim that they're looking to protect health care. That expiring Obamacare subsidies will send premiums soaring and cost many their coverage. The truth? Premiums are expected to rise by $1,665 or 20% on average, a Paragon Health Institute study found. Yet the expiring subsidies account for only 4 of those percentage points, or just $333. Fact is, most Obamacare subsidies are not expiring. What's set to vanish is merely the added cash Democrats in Congress agreed to pay insurers using taxpayer money during COVID. That's it. It's not the entire Obamacare subsidy. It's just that extra cash that they added to the during COVID to help pay for it. So $333 of it. The COVID add-ons increased the taxpayer share of premiums to a whopping 93% on average. For nearly half the enrollees, it was 100%. With the sweeteners gone, taxpayers will only foot 80% of the bill, still far higher than 68% that were covered in 2014 when Obamacare first got going. Those making below the federal poverty level will pay just $180 a year for the silver tier plan. Meanwhile, premiums have tripled for pre-Obamacare levels from about $3,200 to nearly $10,000. And remember, it was the Democrats who set the December 31st expiration date for the COVID-era boosts. Now they want to make them permanent at a 10-year cost of nearly $500 billion. Just what Uncle Sam needs as the national debt surpassed $38 trillion. If, quote, these credits expire, people go bankrupt, people will get sick, some will die, screams Chuck U. Schumer. Bullcrap. In fact, the loss of COVID subsidy enhancers won't even saddle many enrollees with much higher costs or force them to lose their health care. Heck, half of those getting fully subsidized plans won't even use them. They file 0 claims during the year. Now, why is that? Because they don't even know they have Obamacare. Unscrupulous brokers signed them up without their knowledge. Many rely on other insurance for their medical needs. Indeed, in 15 states, enrollees claiming income between 100% and 150% of the poverty level were twice the number of people who actually lived there. Note also that federal subsidies are paid directly to insurers. So taxpayers are shelling out billions to companies to cover folks. Insurers love it. And the people that are covered, they never know it. So really, the claims that the Democrats are making about this shutdown are just as flimsy as any of the others. I mean, it's absolutely disingenuous. I mean, I was just searching for a word there, but a lot of what the Democrats are doing is pretty baffling when you think about it. And you know, most of us chalk it up to, hey, they're just not telling the truth, which is true. But there are reasons behind it, and I think it's important to understand. And if you've got a Democrat running for office in your city or your county or in your legislative district, you really need to ask them these serious questions. So tell us what exactly this government shutdown is about. Tell us. Get them to explain it, because more likely than not, they can't. Now, let's put all of the doom and gloom aside for a moment. There's two really cool things I want to talk to you about. And after the top of the hour break, I'm going to show you one of them. I'm going to play the interview with Bob Ferguson, the vice chair of the Wyoming GOP. He's got a scholarship fund that I think is tremendous. But before that, one of the people that I greatly admire, Glenn Beck, had an announcement yesterday that I think is absolutely tremendous. And I grabbed a piece of his video announcement, and I want to just play it for you because I think this is absolutely incredible. Here, let me just play this for you. Just listen to what he says and what he's put together. Check this out.
The entire collection now contains well over 1 million documents and items of evidence of the greatness of the American experiment, as well as our scars and our mistakes. But it is definitive proof of our beginnings. This library is proof that America was founded on Judeo-Christian values. It is proof that our mission was not slavery, but freedom for all mankind. It is proof that while we have committed terrible wrongs, we have also accomplished miraculous things. It is proof that our story began not in Jamestown, but in Plymouth, Mass. It is proof that when science divorces itself from moral truth, darkness follows, and usually profound darkness. From the race hygiene laws born here in America that inspired the Nuremberg laws in Nazi Germany, to the American eugenics society that lit the path for Mengele's horrors. History repeats itself. If it doesn't, it at least rhymes again and again and again. And once again, we are fighting the same ancient evil, the culture of death. But this library is proof that man can rule himself, that Tesla was the genius, not Edison, that some Native American tribes were glorious and peaceful, while others were bloodthirsty and slave owners, no different than the English that came to Jamestown. Over the last 3 years, my team has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and hundreds and thousands of man hours digitizing this unparalleled archive. And in the last year plus, I have been working on building something the world has never seen before. What was once contained, and still physically is, in a tornado-proof vault, and then another, they call it a mountain here, but I call it a Texas hillside, and a third location, a granite vault in the Rocky Mountains. All of this history is now also contained in a digital vault, all now on blockchain. So these facts and artifacts will never, ever be lost, unless you want to shut down the entire internet. But more than just preservation, which was my first goal, we now have created the first independent, proprietary, AI-driven American historical library. And it is, as you will see next year, complete with its own librarian. We call him George. George is built from the writings of George Washington himself, the writings of the founders, the thousands of sermons that they heard from their church pulpits, the books that they read, and the principles they lived by. He can find any artifact, any document, any speech, and deliver it to you as evidence that what you were taught in school was either misguided out of ignorance, a half-truth, or most likely an out-and-out lie. He will also be able to teach the Constitution. He will teach the Federalist Papers, the civics, American history, in a way that no one has even thought of. No one has ever generated. And it can generate it all without hallucination, as it is all contained in a secure, isolated server where every document is memorized verbatim. This is not ChatGPT.
It's incredible. And you know me, I'm a history fanatic. You have no idea how much time I spend just looking up original sources. You know, whatever topic I'm talking about, it takes me a really long time to look up the original documents that I'm going to use on my show. Now Beck has the third largest library of American history documents in the entire world. The only two places that there's a larger collection is in the National Archives and the Smithsonian. That's it. That's it. Other than that, it's Glenn Beck. He has the largest collection of documents on the Pilgrims. And so now, and the video goes on. It's quite long, but now all of it is available. It's been digitized. You can look it up on the internet, and it's not going to be released until January. But I thought this was absolutely amazing for a history nut like me. This is absolutely incredible. One place where you can go to and say, show me Thomas Jefferson's writings on slavery. What did he really think? And boom, there's all the documents to be read. I mean, I think this is absolutely incredible, and I think it's an amazing thing because most people don't know anything about our founding. And what they do know is they've been told by history teachers, which is probably at best an exaggeration or probably just a half-truth, and at worst, an absolute lie. I mean, you could pick up just about every history book. And I guess, a lot of schools don't use books anymore. Imagine that. Weird how our test scores are so low. But you can just start flipping through it and you'll find stuff that is not even anywhere close to true. You've got to go to original sources. And as you heard Beck say, it proves that, that collection of documents, if you go read our founders in their words, you'll find out exactly that this nation was founded on Judeo-Christian values, that it is absolutely a nation of liberty and freedom. And yeah, have we done some bad stuff? Sure. Yep, there are some things that we've done that have been pretty bad. But we've also done some amazing things. And what makes America truly exceptional, one of the things that makes America truly exceptional, is that we always right the wrongs. Whatever it is that we've done, we fix it. And we do that the world over. And so to prove all of that, you've got to have the original documents. Let me just give you one real quick, and then we're going to take a break. But every school child has been told that Thomas Jefferson had a child by Sally Hemings. Sally Hemings was one of his slaves. Now, did Thomas Jefferson have slaves? Yep, absolutely true. But let me ask you a question. Every guy should know the answer to this question. Well, all of us should. If you don't, maybe you need to get married and, take this problem out of the equation. But how do you determine paternity? Well, you have to have a living male heir. And Thomas Jefferson didn't have any male heirs. So there's no way to prove that he actually had a child with Sally Hemings. But history books report that, yes, indeed, he did have an affair with Sally Hemings and that she bore his child. Well, you can't prove that. So at best you can say, as a historian, is we don't know. Now, can it be proved that somebody in Thomas Jefferson's family, maybe like his brother, had an affair with some of the slaves? Yeah, absolutely, you can do that. But that is as close as you can get. And when you're talking about history, you have to be able to prove what you say. And a lot of teachers, they don't. They just take what they're told from whatever history curriculum they're given. They don't do any of their own research, and so they just teach their students things that are just absolutely not true. And they don't challenge their students to go look it up for themselves. And they just say, hey, here's what happened. Well, you've got to have the original documents, and I'm totally excited about that Beck's new venture. And if I could figure out a way, I'm going to visit. And I've got to go find this out for myself. So we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to play for you the interview with Bob Ferguson. He's got a great new project. I think it's tremendous, and I think it's really needed. And so we're going to talk to him, let him tell you about it when we come back. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap? And your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you nonstop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, Wyoming's most listened to conservative political person, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. It's a record that nobody in the media can come anywhere close to. You know what? I really wish they would. I wish that they would try, but the problem is that they're not interested in telling you the truth, which might lead you to believe that perhaps the media is on the political left, which they are. So I've got this great interview with the vice chairman of the Wyoming Republican Party. His name is Bob Ferguson. He's got a new venture that he's put together that I think is going to be a game changer for a lot of students that are going to college. And so I sat down with them last week to talk about it. The interview runs about 20 minutes. And so here he is, the vice chairman of the Wyoming Republican Party. Joining me on the program is the vice chairman of the Wyoming Republican Party, Bob Ferguson. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, David. Good to be here.
Well, I'm glad we could set this up. We've been trying for a couple of weeks, but we finally got it.
Yeah.
So I guess where I'd like to start is, why don't you just tell us what's been going on with the Wyoming GOP recently?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, we've been working on quite a lot, kind of behind the scenes in particular. There's a lot of statutes that I think we're going to try to tackle in the next legislative session. Some of those have to do with some of the inconsistencies in Title 22. We're talking to various representatives and trying to get legislation proposed for some of those. But then there are other things that have popped up that are, I won't say more pressing, but probably have a bigger effect on people. And that's with the actions of some of the county commissioners across the state. We've had, as you're aware, in Sheridan, we've had for a long time, a number of county commissioners boards that frankly ignore state statute, particularly when it comes to appointing people that are, elected by the party. And, Sheridan had an issue where the county commissioners ignored the recommendations. Park County up here where I am had the same issue. That's kind of carried forth. And, I would say it kind of almost culminated in the actions of the Weston County clerk. That, the actions that she took, which were clearly in violation of statute, took her to task for it. And then the governor and his representatives effectively just, washed their hands of it and, took no action. I think there's going to be a lot of pushback on that.
I think there ought to be.
Yeah, there definitely should be. I mean, these some of the problems with the statutes that we've got are that they carry no penalties. So county commissioners and people that are elected to the county boards, they can basically do whatever they want. And if you've got a governor like unfortunately like Governor Gordon that is not inclined to take action against anybody, the statutes are meaningless if you have a governor that's not going to enforce them. A government or an attorney general that's not going to enforce them at his request. So I think those are things that, we're definitely working on right now to try to tee up for this legislative session.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny that an article came out yesterday that Governor Gordon has received new complaints about the Weston County clerk. So, so now he's going to do something.
It's like, oh, the old felonies weren't good enough, so now we're going to try to prosecute new felonies.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
And, some of those, her actions were just unbelievable. And to tell you the truth, we were having a pretty lively discussion about hand counting of ballots. And, Park County has really been pushing that initiative through a guy named Larry French and others in the party for a number of years. And, somebody stood up and said, I used the Weston County clerk and as an example. And somebody stood up and said, well, yeah, but all she did was use the wrong ballots in the machines. And I said, yeah, and all that did was negate 95% of the actual votes by doing that. So anybody that says that machines are infallible, that is a clear-cut, real-world example that an election, that frankly, if Chip Nyman hadn't been so popular in his district and realized that he didn't have 90% undervotes in his county, all the other races that were much closer, had a major impact on him. So, anybody that says machines are infallible, I'll throw that example up and have them tell me, tell me again how machines are infallible when a county clerk can make, numerous mistakes and just feeding in wrong ballots has, mistakes in parentheses, has a major impact on the outcome.
Well, and the biggest problem there, when I interviewed Becky Hadlock, she didn't tell me the truth either. And interestingly enough, I talked to her, I think it was the day after she had given an interview to the Newsletter Journal, and she told them an entirely different story than the one she told me. And then after the election, she files a report with the Secretary of State and says, oh, no, there was no problems in our election. Everything was fine. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous.
I know, it really is. And I mean, we go through this testing procedure of the voting machines, which is completely bogus if, you don't attempt to do anything that tries to actually test the machines. I mean, you spit in, you give it ballots that are an even count and say, oh, see, the machine read them correctly. Right. Well, how do you know?
Well, and that was exactly the problem there, is that I question whether she even did the test, because if she had and fed it one of those ballots that were incorrectly printed, or that she, that she incorrectly ordered. Well, that's not even right either. She ordered the wrong ballots, and she couldn't have tested the machine because if they had, it would have recorded, however many 50 undervotes or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, now one of the other reasons I wanted to talk to you, Bob, is you announced a scholarship effort at the Charlie Kirk Turning Point USA Freedom Caucus event that we were at this past weekend. Why don't you tell my audience what you're up to? What are you trying to achieve there?
Sure. This was something that after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I was affected just like everyone else, and really wanted to do something to focus on kids that were in Turning Point. And it was sort of brought up. We were thinking about trying to do something within the party, within the state GOP. And one of the ideas was to do a scholarship fund. Well, the more and more we got into the legalities of doing that, the only way to really do a scholarship fund is to do it under a 501c3. And to have that under a political party where you're taking in tax-free donations is really, it may be technically okay, but it really comes pretty close to crossing the line. And it just didn't seem like the party was going to be able to do that. Now, we're going to support Turning Point in other ways as a state party, but I just kind of decided to take this on my own and start a scholarship fund. This was not something that I wanted to do that was a one-year thing. I raised $20,000 or $30,000 and gave it away once, and that was it. I was more interested in starting a perpetual scholarship fund. So I started this organization and announced it last Friday at the Turning Point event. It's called the Wyoming Faith and Freedom Fund. And the whole goal is to provide scholarships to a group of kids that frankly are so emboldened with supporting their conservative principles and publicly supporting their faith in God. These kids have a lot more guts than I ever did when I was their age, but it's really to focus on kids like that have the guts to stand up to be, potentially the future conservative leaders of America. And I want to support those kids in whatever their endeavors are. Now, a couple of things that are unique about this fund is that we're going to start with kids that are actively involved in Turning Point chapters in college or seniors in high school, and that are actively involved in Turning Point high school chapters. Like Kylie Walls, for example, and
I like her.
Yeah, I mean, she's amazing. And, we've had some conversations about some of the things that she's gone through that, haven't quite made it into the press. And it's really kind of interesting what she's been through. But, I want to be able to support kids like that have shown the courage that they've got conservative principles and help them out. So one of the things that's unique about this is it's going to provide scholarships to Wyoming residents only. So you've got to be a Wyoming resident, but you've got to be attending or planning to attend a 2 or 4 year college program or technical or trade school. That's something that, I found as I started looking into this. There's not a whole lot of money out there for kids that are going to trade schools. And Charlie Kirk was such an advocate of, some kid wants to go learn to be a plumber or an electrician or, go to Wyotech and learn truck mechanics or something along those lines. He was such a proponent of a career like that rather than getting a, 4-year degree from Princeton in gender studies. That's absolutely meaningless. So I wanted to try to include those kids in the mix. And, like I said, my goal is to have a perpetual scholarship fund that we raise, frankly, a lot of money. My goal is to raise initially $500,000 for the scholarship fund, because at that level, the earnings from the fund, and I've been an investment manager pretty much my whole life, but that way the earnings from the fund can help support those scholarships on a perpetual basis. And that at that time, it's not like you're raising $20,000 or $30,000 to give away one time, and that's it. This is something that you can continue to essentially support kids in upcoming generations that are conservative and support those conservative principles.
Right on. Okay.
So I'll read you my our mission statement. So
Sure.
The Wyoming Faith and Freedom Fund exists to empower the next generation of principled leaders by providing annual scholarships to Wyoming students who demonstrate a steadfast commitment to faith, liberty, and constitutional values.
It sounds perfect to me. Now, I know that you only just announced this past Saturday,
Right.
but have you got any interest? I mean, you got any investors yet? I don't know if investor is the right word, but anybody contributing to your fund?
Well, I definitely have a lot of interest. I will tell you that the government shutdown is one thing that's affected it, because the part of the IRS that approves 501c3s, even their online system is completely shut down. You put in an application and you get back a message that their online system is not currently working. Come back later. And that's been the case for 3 weeks. So, I think as soon as that frees up, we'll be able to start taking donations. The idea is to really get this program out there, get it promoted. I'm going to start talking to some of the people that manage the technical schools, a couple of technical schools around Wyoming in particular. Now, the requirements are not that somebody has to be going to a school in Wyoming, because, they could go to an out-of-state school or an out-of-state technical school. But as long as they're Wyoming residents, I want to make sure that the money stays with Wyoming kids. So, I had a lot of people come up to me after the dinner on Friday that said they were interested. I know I've had people sort of speak on my behalf to other potential donors that particularly like the idea that the money can also go to kids that are getting a technical education as well as a college.
Well, I think that's a super important part, because like you said, there's a lot of kids that see, that your traditional 4-year college is just not their bag. That,
right.
They don't want to go get a history degree, or they don't want to teach, or they don't want to go to law school. They'd just rather, become a mechanic or a plumber or an electrician or one of those things, or,
Right.
auto body or whatever. And, frankly, Bob, I think that's probably the most valuable piece of this, because not everybody needs to go to a 4-year college, nor does everybody want to.
Right. Well, let's look at some of the greatest entrepreneurs in this country over the last 30 or 40 years. Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, those guys were entrepreneurs. They had ideas and they had a passion behind what they were doing. And, I might not agree with all of them politically, but that's irrelevant. The only way to really, I would say the best way to really be an entrepreneur and to start your own business is to have hands-on experience, with a technical business, and figure out that, hey, I'd like to, somebody goes to Embry-Riddle in Daytona Beach and learns to be an airline pilot, and then all of a sudden 30 years later he winds up running an airline.
Yeah.
So
I think it's great.
Yeah. So that's really my goal. The applicants, I'm in the process of getting people on the board of directors. Dallas Terrell who helped support the event down in Cheyenne for Turning Point. He's going to be on the board. I'm really looking for some large investors to come in that have some experience potentially in other scholarship foundations, and for them to be on the board as well, so that I can take account of that experience from an advisory capacity. Nothing about this is set in stone. If we get board members that say, well, we ought to go this direction, we ought to go exclusively towards trade schools or something along those lines. There's nothing about that is set in stone. The other thing is that I want to use the kids that are involved in Turning Point chapters, because that gives us a large base of applicants for an applicant pool. That we can reach out to relatively easily. We can go to the college chapters and the high school chapters of Turning Point and say, hey, we've got this program. You need to apply. You've got to be a Wyoming resident. You've got to be going to, this type of school. You've got to write an essay. You've got to get a recommendation, a letter recommendation. But that actually gives us a pool that we can start with. But I don't want to limit it to that, obviously. If we have kids that are currently being homeschooled, or are in private schools, before college. I want to make sure that those kids have the opportunities as well. It's just that trying to develop your own pool of applicants without any base at all is really a pretty daunting task. So my goal is to have it be, if somebody else is out there, as long as they're recommended to the selection committee or, a board member or anything along those lines, as long as those kids can get their name into the pool, I'm totally fine with that.
Sure. Excellent. So I know that it's early, but are you expecting that this will be up and going, for the 2026 school year?
That's my goal. My goal is to raise enough money so that we can have an application process, so that we can, first of all, form a selection committee, then have an application process, that the selection committee goes through. And like I said, I'd like to award scholarships. If we could have a handful of $5,000 scholarships and even a handful of $1,000 scholarship, a lot of $1,000 scholarships, that's a lot of money to somebody that's going to a trade school.
Absolutely. Well, and I think when you and I were talking about this, I mentioned, hey, if you can get one textbook paid for, sometimes that's a $500 bill, which is
right.
Another issue entirely. But
yeah.
But at some point, any money is good money, and I think what you're trying to do is great. If folks want to get involved, how do they do that, Bob?
I'd say probably the best way is either email me or give me a call. My number is 307-296-6740. My email currently is rferguson, Ferguson 1873 @gmail. I'm still in the process of developing a website. I've got a domain that is yofaithfreedom.org, but the website's still under construction. I haven't yet been able to find a website designer that's willing to work for the price that I am, which is free. So,
well, maybe one of those kids that needs a scholarship.
Exactly. So as soon as I get that, we'll get. Essentially, we've done a PowerPoint presentation that essentially goes through the scholarship process, what the applicants will be expected to do. And it's really, not that much other than, being a Wyoming resident, going to a 2 or 4 year college or trade or technical school, write an essay on your commitment to faith, freedom, conservative principles, and then have a letter of recommendation. But that's kind of getting the cart before the horse until we actually form the selection committee, and frankly, until we get enough in donations. We can't really give anything away until we've got the money. So
right.
that will be really my next big push, is to, going and, raising $500,000 is something we're not going to be able to do in $100 increments. We're going to have to get some major donors. But I think having the connection to focusing on Turning Point kids right now, that's clearly a hot issue. One of the things that I think I mentioned on Friday night was what really blew me away. I knew how impactful Charlie Kirk was in conservative circles here in this country. But what really blew me away was seeing world leaders and seeing vigils around the globe to, over Charlie Kirk's assassination. I'm not even sure that he understood how much of an impact he really had.
Probably not.
It was very heartwarming to me to see that happen, and frankly, really convinced me that this was not, Turning Point was not going away. The principles that he stood for, the conversations that he allowed to happen, the two-way conversations, it's amazing. The people that hated him are the ones that want to have the least conversations.
Yeah, well, and that's the way it always works.
Yeah,
well, Bob,
it really is.
I got to run, my friend. Okay. Make sure that you keep me apprised of what's going on, and you're welcome back on the show anytime you like.
All right, sounds good. Thanks very much, David. You take care.
Like I told you, pretty cool idea, right? Some scholarships for trade school Turning Point USA kids. And if you're listening to this program and you're outside of Wyoming and you don't know about WyoTech. Wyoming has one of the country's leading technical colleges or trade school, I guess I should say. Auto mechanics, auto body, all sorts of things, and it's all privately owned. And it's pretty easy to get a scholarship to go to the University of Wyoming or any other community college in Wyoming. But you got to pay for it to go to WyoTech. So if we can have a scholarship fund that's set up for the trade school folks, well, then I think that's a fantastic idea. Let's go ahead and take our last break. And when we come back, we'll finish up the program. Back in a minute.
Everybody say, nights gone away, rocks now down, nothing left today. No one gets today, we got to face the truth, nights far away. Tell me what you want, here's what you got. You've been every day more than we have ever seen. Rocks now down, don't ask why.
It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listened to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only getting stronger. Number 39 on the list of the 100 podcasts you should be listening to in 2025. You can watch this program on the OBBM network, on newscasters.com, Facebook, X, Rumble, YouTube, pretty much everywhere. Are you getting the impression that Cowboy state politics is pretty much everywhere? Well, it is. So anyway, if you're not watching, you should be. Let's see here. Where do we want to go next? You know what? There's a couple of idiots that think that they're going to run for president in 2028. Now, yeah. Usually we don't have to worry about presidential candidates for, at least 2 years out. But there are a couple of politicians, which I think we all probably knew that at least one of them was going to try to run for president. Gavin Newsom in California. And this guy has no chance. And here's another thing that I want you to take away from. I've got two videos. One of them is Gavin Newsom. And the other is I just feel compelled to torture you with Kamala Harris again. I need to keep reminding you of what we avoided in the last election. Trump won 312 to whatever it was that Kamala Harris had. And it was a landslide, but it is worth remembering what exactly we dodged there. I mean, it was a big, gigantic bullet. But here is Gavin Newsom in a recent interview that I think was played over the weekend. Check this out.
After the 2026 midterms, you're going to give it serious thought.
Yeah, I'd be lying otherwise. I'd just be lying, and I can't do that.
I can't lie.
Who got 960 on his SAT, that still struggles to read scripts. That was always in the back of the classroom. The idea that you even throw that out is in and of itself extraordinary. Who the hell knows?
It's extraordinary. And Gavin Newsom knows who's going to run for president. I mean, God help us. Well, you know what, though? I think if you were to just add AOC to the mix, we might have a pretty entertaining presidential cycle. I mean, just imagine the fun that J.D. Vance would have tearing those people apart left, right? I mean, it would be like an amusement park for him, a rhetorical amusement park where he could just pick one. Wake up the day, I think today we'll go after something stupid that AOC said, or Gavin Newsom or whomever else. I think it would be tremendous. Well, here is what Kamala Harris had to say about that. And I know. You feel like this is torture, but again, we need to be reminded about who is not president right now. Here you go.
In terms then of what is next for you, you write very powerfully about the differences that many women have made to your life, whether that was your meeting with Angela Merkel or the experience of growing up with your extraordinary mother or the stories of your baby nieces, Amara and Leela. When are they going to see a woman in charge in the White House?
In their lifetime, for sure.
Could it be you? Possibly.
Possibly.
Have you made a decision yet?
No, I have not.
What about running again as someone else's vice president, or maybe being part of another ticket? If Gavin Newsom, your fellow Californian, said, hey, come and be my Secretary of State, would you consider that?
Right now I'm focused on my book tour. And I'm glad to know that you read it 3 times.
I did. I read it 3 times because it's a great read.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Hold on. She read that book 3 times. 3 times. And she goes on about and says how fantastic Kamala Harris's book was. But who in their right mind, okay, maybe that answers my question right there. But I was going to say, who in their right mind would read that big hunk of drivel 3 times? Oh my God. 1 time would be enough, my friends. But let's continue with this.
Book, I'm not done.
That is correct. I am not done. I have lived my entire career a life of service, and it's in my bones. And there are many ways to serve. I've not decided yet what I will do in the future beyond what I am doing right now, which is meeting with many people. Obviously, right now I'm in the UK, but otherwise I've been spending a lot of time in our country. Most recently, I was spending an incredible amount of time in the South. I was in Georgia, and North Carolina, and Alabama, and talking with people and mostly listening, and I'm enjoying doing that. I think that people want to be heard right now. And one of the reasons that I decided not to run for governor of California, I want to listen to people without it being transactional, without asking people for their vote, but listening to them. I think the American people have a lot to say right now.
But you've been very clear that it's a possibility you might run again to become president. And in my experience interviewing politicians, when someone says, I'm not done, it means they are thinking seriously about running. But when you look at the bookies' odds, they put you as an outsider, even behind Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I mean, is that underestimating you?
I think there are all kinds of polls that will
I
tell
think
you
there's
a
all
variety
kinds of
things.
polls.
I've never listened to polls. If I listened to polls, I would have not run for my first office or my second office, and I certainly wouldn't be sitting here in this interview.
I don't listen to polls, except for the ones that were lying to you and saying that you were going to pull off the 2024 election. More lies from Kamala Harris. The only complaint I have about that, well, I mean, there's lots of complaints, but the main one is she didn't dip into one of her famous word salads in the middle of that interview, or either that or the BBC edited it out. Not saying they did, just saying when Kamala Harris is in the room, there is a big chance. There's a huge chance. I mean, you wouldn't even want to take a bet on this, that one of those crappy word salad things is going to crop up. So I mentioned earlier in the show that there was this reclusive billionaire that donated $130 million to pay the troops. Turns out he lives in Wyoming, and his name is Tim Mellon. From Fox News, an article entitled Mystery Trump Ally Donates $130 million to cover troops' paychecks amid the shutdown chaos. And I quote, Fox News senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy reports on the meeting among President Trump, the Secretary of War, and top military leaders. The Department of War received an anonymous donation of $130 million Thursday to go towards paying U.S. troops during the government shutdown. But Congress may need to get involved for it to actually get in the hands of service members due to legal limitations. On October 23rd, the Department of War accepted an anonymous donation under its General Gift Acceptance Authority. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell said in a statement to Fox News Digital on Friday, quote, the donation was made on the condition that it be used to offset the cost of the service members' salaries and benefits. We're grateful to this donor's assistance after Democrats opted to withhold pay from the troops. But it's unclear how the Trump administration can legally use the funds to pay the troops without Congress's involvement. Turns out that this guy is Tim Mellon, and he lives in Wyoming. From the Cow Pie, in an article entitled, Who is Timothy Mellon? The reclusive Wyoming billionaire who gave $130 million to troops. And I quote, reclusive Wyoming billionaire Timothy Mellon has been identified by the New York Times as the anonymous donor of the $130 million to troops during the shutdown. Last year, Mellon funded a billboard on the state line that warned drivers that Colorado was Venezuela. Actually, and that same billboard, and I don't travel to Denver all that often. Maybe it's once a year, if that, or at least I don't drive to Denver. I mean, the lovely Christine and I end up doing, a fair amount of traveling, but we always take a flight. Anyway, if you drive to Denver, right on the Colorado line, there's always this billboard, and it's got something funny about California on it. Let's see here. Quote, life in Connecticut did not seem satisfactory. Too many New Yorkers were moving in. True friends were difficult to make. Traffic was becoming alarmingly dangerous. State taxes were always on the increase. Life in general was becoming more tense and unpleasant, writes Mellon in his self-published autobiography, Pan Am Captain. He's the 83-year-old grandson of former U.S. Secretary of the Treasury Andrew Mellon and an heir to the Mellon banking fortune. Mellon and his wife chose Wyoming as their new home over locations in Florida and South Dakota, buying two adjoining ranches, the Riverbend and the Mill Iron S near Saratoga, southwest of Laramie. Moose grazing along the Laramie River, which bisected both properties, convinced us to buy, he said. The deal was sealed. Later, Mellon decided to donate the A Ranch near Laramie and to the University of Wyoming School of Agriculture, which with the understanding that the school would resell it on the open market for no less than the appraised residual price used for the scenic easement, according to his autobiography. The agreement also called for the university to use the proceeds from the sale to fund research in animal diseases such as brucellosis. Mellon, whose wealth is estimated to be as much as $4 billion, made his fortune through the transportation sector, founding the railroad company Guilford Transportation Industries, which bought bankrupt Pan American World Airways in 1998. He's also a major donor to the Republican Party, several different candidates, and several different causes. Let's see here. Mellon gave $50 million to President Trump's campaign in May of 2024, which at the time was the largest single contribution, according to Open Secrets. Additionally, at the start of 2022, Mellon reportedly poured more than $125 million into Make America Great Again, the Trump-affiliated Super Political Action Committee, and $25 million into the American Values 2024 RFK Jr. Super PAC. Mellon has also been involved in conservative efforts outside Wyoming. So, pretty cool that a guy from and who wouldn't think that a rich guy from Wyoming would pay the salaries of the troops that the Democrats refuse to pay. And that's don't take that last word lightly. Refuse to pay. There was a vote late last week where the Republicans said, "Hey, let's just vote on paying the troops. Can we do that? Can we have one vote to sign the paychecks of the troops?" And the Democrats voted no on it. That should tell you everything you need to know about them, that they're willing to sacrifice the families of our military members all for politics. That it doesn't really have anything to do with those subsidies. It's all because they hate Trump and Orange Man bad. I mean, that's what it is. And it's no more complicated than that. And if you thought that the Democrats had some sort of grander political strategy surrounding this, they don't. And I was recording a podcast yesterday with my friend Josh Jennings. We do this other podcast called Politics Reloaded. It's when Josh, Mark Jennings, and Dana Jennings and myself get together and we just kind of talk politics. You can find it on Substack. It's a lot of fun, and it's just it's a different perspective on current events. Josh lives in and around Dallas. And so anyway, we get into a lot of different topics, and it's just another way to get information to you. So go check that out. It's Politics Reloaded on Substack, and right now the web address escapes me, but if you just search for that, you'll find it. Now, Bill Maher, I often talk about him because he is a classic liberal. He's not one of the radical lefties that I spent the first half hour of the program talking about. By classic liberal, I mean that he's the guy that he still loves the Constitution. He loves this country, but he just has policy differences with the Republicans. He thinks we ought to spend more on social programs, probably believes in legalizing weed, though I don't know that one for sure. He may have come out against that. I don't know. But he is a classic liberal. Well, he got into it with one of his panelists about Zoran Mamdani. You got to watch this video. Check this out. Let me just find it here. Let's see here. Bill Maher. Here we go.
This is not just New York that's on the ballot. I think the whole Democratic Party in the country is on the ballot. And the whole country will be looking at this race to see which way are the Democrats going to go.
I think Mamdani has a lot of energy. He's excited a lot of young people. I think that's a good thing for the Democrats. And I think if you're in a purple district, say you disagree with some of the things that he does and use that to establish your independent cred.
Well, you make it sound like he's a little more mainstream than I think he is. I mean, the issue now that Andrew Cuomo is bringing up in New York is that he is a Ugandan citizen. Uganda is a country where they kill homosexuals.
So somebody who is a dual citizen can't be mayor of New York, or?
I would renounce, if I was the dual citizen with a country whose government policy was we kill homosexuals, I would renounce that citizenship.
Yeah, I think anybody in their right mind would renounce that citizenship, but not Comrade Mamdani. And it's the only evidence that you really need is he is parroting the classic socialist lines. Free stuff, free stuff, free stuff. And I mean, that's what socialists always do. And that's how they're able to convince younger voters to go along with their stupid message. And it is always that. Mamdani's, and this is amazing to me that one of his campaign planks on his platform, or platform planks, I guess, is that he's going to give free bus fare to everybody. And that's what moves the electorate? That's one of the ones that he's going with. Well, the truth is that, and he claims that it's going to reduce crime. Now, and the link there is absolutely amazing. Well, because bus drivers are being harassed, and if there's free bus fare, then they won't be harassed anymore. And this is how stupid the left thinks that you are, that you're going to buy that argument. It's like I said in the beginning of the show, my friends. I think that that voters are going to get exactly what they deserve with Zoran Mamdani. Well, let's see here. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I've got a couple of stories left. This one is from the New York Post. J.D. Vance slammed Zoran Mamdani for making his auntie the real victim of 9/11. And this is an extension of the story I brought you earlier, but J.D. Vance jumped in the middle of it. Vice President J.D. Vance skewered the Big Apple mayoral frontrunner Zoran Mamdani after the lefty poll delivered a teary speech about his Muslim auntie's fears in the days following September 11th. According to Zoran, the real victim of 9/11 was his aunt, who got some, allegedly, bad looks, Vance wrote Saturday morning on X, sharing a clip of the socialist candidate choking back tears as he recalled the anti-Muslim bias his family experienced in the aftermath of 9/11. It wasn't the over 2,900 American citizens that were murdered on that day that he's shedding a tear for. Of course not, because Zoran Mamdani is a radical Islamist. Mamdani, who beamed in a photo with an unindicted co-conspirator from the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, vowed on Friday to champion the Big Apple's Muslim community after sharing that his frightened late aunt stopped riding the subway at the time, saying she didn't feel safe wearing her hijab. I wonder why. Because Muslim terrorists just knocked down the World Trade Center buildings and killed thousands of American citizens. I don't know why she would feel uncomfortable. Maybe because Muslim terrorists killed a whole bunch of people. Maybe that's why. I just venturing a guess there. His impassioned remarks came after fending off repeated attacks from his mayoral rivals, Governor Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa, who branded him anti-Semitic over his anti-Israel views. He absolutely is. How many times did I play you the soundbite of him not renouncing the phrase "from the river to the sea," which means the destruction of Israel? Quote, "The dream of every Muslim is simply to be treated as any other New Yorker, and yet for too long we've been told to ask for less than that and be satisfied with whatever little we receive," Mamdani said during a press conference outside of the Islamic Cultural Center in the Bronx. "No more. I will not change who I am, how I eat, or the faith that I am proud to call my own. But there is one thing I will change. I will no longer look for myself in the shadows. I will find myself in the light." I bet he will. And New Yorkers, you better not vote for him. I doubt very seriously that there's anybody in New York that listens to this program, but if there is, don't vote for a radical communist Islamist. The 34-year-old Queens Assemblyman, who also accused Cuomo and Sliwa of fueling Islamophobia in an effort to sabotage his campaign, before early voting kicked off Saturday. Let's see here. Where is it? Yeah, anyway, I don't see where, let's see here. At any given moment, there's a crisis. Yeah, I don't see where the vice president's comments were in there. Let's see here. We already did that one, and we already did that one. All right, my friends. Well, let's see here. Maybe there is a video or two that I haven't played. I always do this. I get excited and I run through articles and, I just don't know which one. Yeah, we played them all. All right, my friends. Well, we've burned through another busy broadcast, 2 hours on the program. Make sure that you don't miss a minute of Cowboy State Politics. Yesterday on the podcast, it was a barn burner, my friends. I discovered that the teacher, Josh Hansen, at the alternative school in Sheridan, has been posting a lot of really crazy stuff on, he hates conservatives and he thinks we should all be treated like Nazis because, of course, we are Nazis. But he's been posting a lot of stuff on the ridiculous social media platform Blue Sky. And if you want to know exactly what this guy thinks of you and what apparently the Sheridan School District No. 2 School Board won't do anything about, go listen to the podcast. And don't miss a minute of Cowboy State Politics Live. It's right here. Facebook, YouTube, X, and Rumble, the OBBM network and newscasters every Tuesday through Friday beginning at 8 a.m. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.